From Omaha, Nebraska to New York City. From planet Earth to extraterrestrial life in space. A podcast with no equal, engaged in unconventional warfare through your speakers and headphones. This is a show about embracing the suck, conquering your demons, and finding God in the face of adversity. Chris Tonto Peranto.
Twitch is on. Motherfucker, I'm gonna shoot you in the face.
Ian Scotto.
You know, Ian and I have been dating for a long time.
You are now tuned into the Battleline podcast.
Battleline podcast. Really exciting episode for you guys today. We got John Rain Waters, host of the Afterburn podcast and retired Air Force F-16 pilot. For the new listeners, my name is Ian Scotto.
And I am Chris Peranto.
Yeah, and we talk to guys in the military community, guys and women in the Second Amendment community. And before we get into everything, we got a few things to get into. Some unfortunate news that I sent you last night. I originally sent you from a CBS affiliate, which I believe they originally said it was 4 Marines. And now from what I'm seeing is 5 Marines from this article in the New York Times. This is the latest article I've seen from the New York Times from Eduardo Medina. Military plane carrying 5 Marines crashes in California, officials say. It was not immediately clear how many survived the crash, and officials said the plane, an MV-22B Osprey that belonged to the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing, crashed in a remote area 100 miles east of San Diego. A military aircraft carrying 5 U.S. Marines crashed in Southern California on Wednesday, according to a spokesman for the U.S. Marine Corps. It was not immediately clear how many survived the crash. The spokesman, First Lieutenant Dwayne Campos, said the aircraft, an MV-22B Osprey that belonged to the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing, crashed at about 1 p.m. in a remote area near Highway 78 and Coachella Canal Road, which is near the Naval Air Facility in El Centro, California, about 100 miles east of San Diego, the authorities said. The cause of the crash was under investigation. The Naval Air Facility in El Centro said that contrary to initial reports, there was no nuclear material on board the aircraft. So they were originally saying that, and I guess there wasn't. Multiple agencies and emergency medical workers responded to the crash site, said Gil Revelar, a spokesman for the Imperial County Sheriff's Office. The crash came almost 3 months after 4 Marines were killed in Norway during a NATO training exercise while using the same type of aircraft, an MV-22B, which can be operated as a helicopter or turboprop aircraft, according to the U.S. Navy. The aircraft's main use for the U.S. Marine Corps is the transportation of troops, equipment, and supplies from ships and land bases for combat assault and assault support, according to the U.S. Navy. In late March, a small U.S. Navy plane crashed alongside Virginia's Eastern Shore. I believe we covered that, killing 1 crew member and injuring 2 others. That plane was an E-2D Hawkeye. So, man, I don't know what to say beyond what I said the last time we covered a story like this, and you could speak more to this, but I think, as you always say, guys know what they sign up for going into the military, but I think that dying in combat is something that you can expect. I don't think anyone expects this to happen just in training in California, you know?
You don't. Actually, when you're training, you really don't think you're ever going to die in training. I don't think there's a lot of us think we're ever going to die in combat either. But the realization, and most military guys are realists. Most in the military, even if they are the biggest goose in the world, they're realists. They know that it's a possibility. But you don't ever think it is in training because it's training. I don't know. It's just a weird mindset. It's not like it doesn't happen because we see it happen. Some have experienced, but it's like, well, I got the best equipment, you hope, which is what you feel like, especially in the aviation side. Not to say in the aviation side, they do a great job having the best equipment out there. Ospreys, though, they ran into issues when they first came out about because they are a rotary wing and a fixed wing all in one. You know, they're a helicopter and a plane all in one, and the airflow and all that, they couldn't figure it out. Now they did, and Ospreys actually have been proven in combat, so they're used readily in combat. But there's still, I always thought, man, there's still a chance this thing could go down because of because of how it's designed. But I'm not an engineer, and that's something we asked
John, yeah.
John, shit. We asked John about it because he'll know a lot more about it than we will. But also, guys, there's a lot of things that get put into place for training. And you do a risk assessments. Man, we have risk assessment cards that we have to do. Any leader has to go through to check to make sure the training's safe. So, I just think it comes down. There's a lot of training that goes on out there. It's dangerous to train. It is. It still is. Whether you're fast roping out of helicopters, whether you're rappelling, whether you're just flying in the air, it's fairly dangerous. We try to do it in normal conditions, but did it say the conditions? Were they just okay?
No, that I didn't
see,
hear.
That's what we need to know, because we do train in austere conditions, because you have to learn how to fight in austere conditions. So maybe, I'm just what ifing, but maybe the conditions weren't good. And we, as humans, we're still fallible. We are. We make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes in the military kill us. It does. So that's just the realism of it. I'm not trying to be cold-hearted. I'm just saying that's how it is. But to those that died, to get away from that, God bless them. They were still serving their country honorably, and I know their troops are going to miss them, and I know their families are. But they still, whether it was combat or not, they still were serving this country honorably. Yeah. And doing it in a place that it is tough to train out there, especially flying, especially in those areas they were at with Southern California. Just dust storms and the heat and all that, it compounds the training, hence why the Marines train out there. It's tough to train out there, except in Pendleton. Sorry, guys, San Diego's not tough to train. I'm kidding, guys. But it is tough to train out in the desert out there, and those conditions come up. But that's why they train out there, because it's tough to train out there.
Yeah, when you talk about the idea of you don't think about it in training, I mean, I think it's the same thing you don't think about when you get on a plane. You don't think about it when you get in a car. I mean, but I think when you're in combat, it might be a little different. When you're in combat, there's always that possibility. So, but yeah, as you said, rest in peace to these 5 Marines who were serving. In I guess happier news, of course, I wanted to talk about your last training course in Oklahoma.
Oh yeah.
And the cool thing that was different about it was I got to meet Jesse Fenley at the Copper Ticket event, which I'm wearing the shirt for. Yeah. And this is the first time you had him on board as a trainer. And I think people might be wondering how it all went.
I think Jesse's awesome. The 2 young guys we have, and sorry, Ben, you're not young. Ben Morgan, another one of our instructors, the leads. We're not young, Ben. Me and you are older Rangers now. But getting the young guys on with like Michael Billings and Jesse Fenley, reminds me.
Jesse's significantly younger though than Mike.
He looks really.
He looks
young,
very young,
but he's just got that baby face. I don't know the exact age, but he's not like 21 years older.
Yeah, but he's got to be in his 20s, right?
Yeah, he's in his 20s, and Michael. I don't think Mike's just in his low 30s. I don't think he's very. I think he's younger than you, brother. Michael.
Really? Okay. Yeah.
It's just he's got one of those the guys that lose their hair. It's just the young guys lose their.
But
hair.
Jesse, is the first guy I think you've had in his 20s as a trainer.
Yeah, it is, and it's just with Battleline, we've gone through a lot of instructors that we've used, and it's just the fit's got to be there. You got to have that gel and the humility and that he has, and of course he's a great trainer. That's no doubt there, and he's a great shooter. Obviously, you saw that he's tremendous. Oh, yeah. But I look for more than just that. It's the intangibles of smiling. I do like guys that have a lot of faith, and he does. He has stable families. He does. He has a tremendous wife, and that is admirable to me. It shows integrity, and that integrity transfers over to the training and the trainer itself. And so that was also a plus. So that's why we've kind of gone through some instructors that great instructors, but the gel for everybody didn't mesh. And I'll be honest, man, Tulsa, I think we've got it finally figured out. Got it down where everybody, because we had everybody there. It was me and Ben Morgan was there, Jeremy Mitchell was there, Michael Billings was there, and Jesse. And it was, I wanted to where it came down where if I'm not there, they can still run it. And it actually happened. I was like, they had their stuff. I didn't even need to tell them what to do. It's just got it, we're doing it. And that's beautiful. And that to me tells me that I'm not needed. And that's what I want to feel like as a leader or an instructor or anything. You want to feel like you're not needed because the guys you're working with have got it. You don't have to worry about it. And that's how it was. But Jesse itself, yeah, he's awesome. Him and Mike and Ben together over there where they're doing the live fire stuff. I was doing all the housework, all the room clearance stuff. They did an awesome job. And I guys, I implore you, come to a Battleline course or come to an E3 firearms course, because Battleline will be the training element for that, for a lot of it. And you're going to train with Jesse and Mike and Ben and myself, and you're going to have fun, but you're going to learn a lot. And they like to get they're physically active. So that's huge with Battleline. You got to be physically active to come to a course. And it was awesome, man. I was one Iron Gal Firearms there at Eddie Ranji's place. That's another great range to train at. I hope you get to come to one of those. We do it again, Ian. You'll love it out there. It's like out here. Just it is city because we're near Tulsa, but it's like coming to this place here in Fort Defense. Just the feeling you get coming out in the Midwest. And man, it was tremendous. I can't wait. We got another course coming up July 9th and 10th with me and Mike Ritchie, who's our medic. We're doing a Stop the Bleed 1-day room clearing course in
Kansas.
In Kansas. And you'll have a lot of fun. And Jesse and Mike will be coming to more Battleline courses. So if you see them on there, you're going to learn from them, but you're also going to have a great time with them. And you're going to take something away from the course, even more so than just tactics and firearms.
Yes, so go to tontosgearlocker.com. You can still sign up for that one, and you'll see all the courses on the horizon, of which there's less than last year, to be honest. And you're winding it down a little bit compared to where you were last year. But I think in terms of it means for people who want to go, if you need to travel a few miles, you guys are going to make it worth their while. So so come out. tontosgearlocker.com. If anyone, I know most of our audience doesn't really do social media. I just see from, people who listen. But for those who do, you may have seen I posted on Instagram. I was at Sally's a Pizza.
Yeah.
It's called A Pizza. Very Italian. But in New Haven, Connecticut, it was the most random of things because of the fact that Ricky Rackman, who you guys may remember from MTV Headbangers Ball, tweeted out that he was going to be there with Jamie Josta after he did Jamie Josta's podcast. And I know that Ricky is a friend of Gary Brugman, like a longtime friend. So I was like, wow, that's awesome. I want to be there. But then he tweeted out the next day. He was like, I'm going to be there at 3:33 if anyone wants to come out. So I came out and I had pizza with Jamie Joster from Hatebreed and Ricky Rackman and two other people. It was pretty cool, pretty small experience. And the reason he's doing it, though, I should throw out there. So Ricky does a ride pretty much every year for a different charity. Yeah. I thought this one was for veteran suicide. The last one was for that. And I spoke to him about it, and they raised tens of thousands of dollars for veteran suicide. This is a different one, and I actually printed out, if any of you guys want to donate to the GoFundMe. I mean, he's traveling all across America doing this, basically. I think he started in LA, and now he's all the way in Connecticut, and he's going out to New Hampshire, and he loves this. Like, he lives for this, to just ride every year. And this is from the GoFundMe, just to give you an idea of what it is. It says for 2022, and I have the patches here that he gave me, the ride 2022. I thought veteran suicide was 22, but I think it's just 2022. But yes, so it says Ricky Rackman, Leah Vendetta, and Leah is his girlfriend. She's a tattoo artist. She was on Ink Master. I didn't see her there, but I think she's joining him for some of it. They ride across America for the Victory Junction Gang. This year, Ricky and Leah will be raising money for the Victory Junction Camp. The Victory Junction Camp is a place where children with serious illness get the opportunity to experience the joys of childhood and forget about being sick for a while. Victory Junction gives chronically ill children ages 6 to 16 the chance to experience a fun and empowering camping environment where physicians and volunteers properly attend to their medical needs. These children have chronic medical conditions and serious illnesses, including but not limited to autism, cancer, craniofacial facial anomalies, diabetes, hemophilia, sickle cell anemia, or spina bifida. Although the cost of sending a child to camp is valued at $2,500, no child or family incurs this cost thanks to the continued support of generous donors. So that's basically what he's doing. He has a GoFundMe. If you look up the ride 2022 with Ricky Rackman and Leah Vendetta. And of course, being that he just met us for pizza, I threw in some money for the charity as well. I mean, because that's why he's doing this. And he was a cool guy. We got to talk about all different things. I told him I was a friend of Gary Brugman, and he said, I'll quote, he said, I love Gary, but I can't talk politics with him. And
are they? I mean, Gary is still a huge Trumper, right? Is that?
oh yeah.
And as Ricky,
I mean, he gave him a pardon. I understand.
I guess you kind of have to be that. But is Ricky? Does he talk politics at all? The reason I said I used to, I grew up on Headbangers Ball.
Yeah.
And watching Ricky Rackman with all the hairband, and so I guess I never thought him as being political. Period. At all. I'm sure
I don't think he is. I think he's a lot like you, where he doesn't want to talk politics. Because the thing is, I mentioned Battleline podcast to him, and I have mentioned to him before on Twitter, and I think he kind of blew me off on Twitter, and I think it was because he assumes I don't want to get into politics. And he even said to me, he's like, if I come on, I don't want to talk politics. And I was like, we would definitely not talk politics. But I know he's a guy who cares about veterans, cares about causes like these, and has an amazing story. So I'd love to get him.
Yeah, and Ricky, we don't. I think that's great. We don't. I don't want to get into politics. I'm not in. I think they see Tano and they just assume Benghazi and Hillary. I wish people would. There's nothing political about being left behind. It's just how it was. And because they're politicians now, we just assume it's no. I'm not in any party. I think both parties can do a lot of soul searching and fixing. So I'd love to have him and if he watches this, I'd love to have you on the show. I know Ian, of course, would love to have you on the show.
Yeah.
And just because I grew up on all that stuff. I grew up on your MTV because that's when MTV was actually MTV. When it was, I would like to get his take on what he thinks MTV is now compared to back then. Because I don't think it even holds a candle to how it was back then. That was the great days, man. Headbangers Ball, and when music was still music, people playing their own instruments a ton, and it was fun, man. It was all fun and debauchery and good times, and you grew up on that. And that's what high school was like. You got Headbangers Ball, and then right after that came MTV Raps. So you had the best of both worlds. You got the metal, but you've also got the hair bands, and then you've got the gangster rap. I mean, I'm blessed that I grew up on that music, and that's because I'm glad I got to experience both of that. So you go to high school, you either had NWA playing or Motley Crue playing or White Snake. I mean, it was all, and then the Beastie Boys out of nowhere trying to mix it all up. So it was, yeah, I'd love to have him on the show, dude. I think it'd be fantastic to just get his take on everything, but his take mostly on music television. And if it's any better, I think MTV sucks. I watch MTV 80s now, but I don't watch the regular stuff.
I think he would agree. And I think, now that he's doing podcasts and Jamie Jost is doing podcasts, they're in that whole world now. And I got to talk to them about that whole world, and that they were actually telling me, and I won't say names, of course, but about like certain guests who have blown them off, and then they hear them on the local radio station. And Jamie's like, dude, he could have come on my podcast and talked to like tens of thousands of people, and we would have talked about interesting things. And then he goes on this stupid show, and they ask him the same fucking questions we've heard a million times before. And so like I think they could relate to that whole world. And if we ever got Ricky on, the cool thing too with him is he really does have a story of perseverance, because
that's awesome.
After Headbangers Ball was canceled, he's very open that he could not get a job. He lost everything. He had no money. And I mean, I think he went for years just doing jobs that he says he sucked at, but just to get by, like things like being a used car salesman. And it wasn't until years that went by, he's always been into racing and NASCAR, and NASCAR hired him to be a commentator. And then his career took off from there. But he's always been very open about that, tweeting like, I've been through this. I've been through depression. I've lost my job. And, you could always pick yourself up. So I think I'd love to get into that.
And that's right. That's right in our genre. That's right down what we do, dude. Also I'd like to get on the guy that owns Iron Gal Farms, Eddie Ranji, just because he's in the oil business and the gas huge. He owns Dexton Oil. He has tremendous stories about perseverance. But I was talking to him about gas prices and things like that, he knows what's going on. I'd love to have him on, so there stops being a lot of the speculation of why prices are so high, and actually get it from the horse's mouth from a gentleman that's in there. But also, just his life growing up and how he became an oil tycoon. You'd never know it, but how he became an oil tycoon. He really, I shouldn't say tycoon, but very well done in the oil industry. But just getting him on to talk about his life growing up, and then get the actual, hey, Eddie, all right, really, why are gas prices going up?
Yeah. No, we should do it. He'd be great.
He'd be a great one.
I'm only jumping in here because we got to get
we
to
got
Rain Waters. But
on.
before we do, we got to talk about Bubs Naturals, which is a product I use every day. You use every day. The collagen protein, the MCT oil powder, and the thing that really separates them is that they're single source grass fed cows that are they're sourced from just one single ingredient in terms of the collagen protein. And there's supplements that really work. It's a supplement. Collagen in general, I always say, is something you're not getting in your diet. It's something that you really need to supplement with. So oftentimes I'll see on posts that you make and Bubs Naturals, they go, oh, it's just all about having good nutrition, having a good diet, which of course that's fundamental. But supplements are supposed to supplement in your nutrition. And this is a supplement that really works, all of their stuff.
It's tremendous, and it says on the bottom, these are not substitutes for meal replacements. It's a supplement to assist a healthy lifestyle, and it does, guys. It works tremendously. It's helped me maintain my gut health with the MCT oil, which also is a natural pickup. So if you ever want a pre-workout, you put that MCT oil in your coffee, whatever you want to drink it in, and then the collagen protein helps rebuild. It helps rebuild those joints. It helps rebuild those things that we lose as we get older because of just normal wear and tear. And it has definitely helped me immensely. And then the extra protein, I know it's not the way 60 million milligrams of protein that does, but it does help on the rebuilding and the recovery of your muscles. It works and it tastes good. And it's something that I believe we all need. And you can tell when you're taking it because your nails grow, your hair grows a little bit more, especially us old guys here.
I cut my nails, yeah.
It kind of, yes, and it's tremendous. And of course, half a part of that 10% of the sales go to Bubs G. Glendora Memorial Foundation. So it definitely is beneficial. A buddy of mine just called me yesterday. Hey, what's that stuff you're taking? Tom Alabrando. We need to have him on the show too. Another tremendous guy, served with in Iraq, and then now is one of the best instructors in the country. We need to have him on. But he's like, hey man, I need something to help me recover. What was that stuff that you had on your podcast? He listens to the podcast. I said, oh, you have Bubs. Here, I'll send you the link. Well, we got another one. Another guy
that's awesome.
That's just working. So yeah, guys, try it. You're gonna love it, and it tastes good, especially in coffee. It definitely does taste good.
It's cool that it's like personal friends reaching out to you too, because I'm sure they're like, is it just that they're paying you? Does this stuff really work?
Well, that's
and for us, no, we really do use this. So check it out, guys. BubsNaturals.com. Use the promo code Battleline and you're gonna get 20% off. That's gonna give you the best deal anywhere. So BubsNaturals.com, promo code Battleline. Link is right there in the description. Of course, also, we were just talking about Fort Scott Munitions. We're both wearing Fort Scott Munitions merch today. Right. For those of you who don't watch on YouTube, I mean, a lot of you guys listen, but we have a YouTube channel and we're wearing Fort Scott merch. So go to YouTube and check us out. But Fort Scott Munitions is a manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammunition that is designed to tumble upon impact in soft tissue, leaving devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. This ammunition was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standard of military-grade ammunition design. It was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it would be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring they receive the same results with each pull of the trigger. Fort Scott Munitions is available throughout privately owned businesses in all 50 states. All you got to do is go on the website, you go to the dealer locator, you type your zip code in, and you're going to find a dealer right by you. So FortScottMunitions.com, link is in the description. Fort Scott, MUNITIONS.com. Every now and again, they have ammo on there as well, so you'll be able to get ammo in bulk. And when they do, you can use our promo code on that, on any of the merch, the hats, the T-shirts. Use the promo code Battleline at checkout, and you're going to get 15% off your order. Only available to listeners of the Battleline podcast. FortScottMunitions.com, promo code Battleline, one word, of course. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud supporter of Chris Peranto, Battleline Tactical, and the Battleline podcast. So joining us for the first time on the podcast, a guy we're very excited to have on, Rain John Waters, host of the Afterburn podcast, retired Air Force F-16 pilot. You have an amazing background. When I told Chris that I said to Chris originally, it was like, we got to get someone on from Top Gun. I don't know if you've tried to get someone on from Top Gun, and they're kind of blowing us off. I don't know what happened, but he was like, let's get a real F-16 pilot on, man. Let's get John Waters. So.
Who needs a Navy guy?
I don't screw that. Let's get someone that actually done it before. Let's get John on. So come on, man. We don't have the clout. The publicists look at our numbers and be like, nah, we're not gonna have him on there. Let's go put him on some show, some weenie show. Yeah, they have 8 million followers, but they don't know what the hell they're doing over there. They're just gonna talk about not cool F-16 stuff, obviously.
Talk about real stuff like tactics and stuff. And
have you seen it? Have you seen the movie?
Yeah, we went last week. Yeah.
Okay, tell me, because I'm not a pilot. You know that. What did not the movie? What did you think? Because I get asked the same thing about the movie. Not really it's the tactics. Hey, was it accurate? Well, that's me asking you. Hey, how are the tactics? Was it pretty accurate or was it over the top?
Yeah, I mean, like broad brush, right? Like they did a really good job. It's a really entertaining movie. And I think, because there's some movies out there, there's like, oh yeah, not even close, right? There was definitely some liberty taken in various parts, right? But I think like inherently they did a pretty good job.
Good.
I mean, I don't think you're going to see an F-18 blitzing through a formation, close formation to start the fight. That might raise a few eyebrows. We could talk about, doing pops, dropping GBU-12s, and then, dodging advanced surface air missile systems. Maybe not. I think it might end a little differently, but I think, in the end, they did a pretty good job at it.
Good. Well, it's not that easy dodging those surface air stuff.
It's strange. Something that can go like Mach 7 or Mach 9 and pull 50 Gs. It just turns out, even an F-16, it's not going to work out too well for you.
Well, that's okay. That's what about the camaraderie of the group, and the attitudes, and because that's huge. To me, that's huge. I would know the difference for the most part. I know there's some arrogance and bravado because you guys are pilots, and that's just how it is. But was it over the top too much? Or was it because they got ours right? Actually, the actual mannerisms in our movie, they got it pretty spot on.
Yeah, I've heard you say that, and I also don't have you on mine and talk about it in detail. But I think there's some Hollywood isms that go into it, and I'm an Air Force guy, so our equivalent is weapons school. So the Air Force will pick their top, each squadron or each base rather. So let's say Shaw, 3 fighter squadrons. Okay. There can be 2 classes a year that go to weapons school. And out of that, you might have 1 or 2 guys that go out of the base that go to weapons school. They'll spend 6 months and then they might come back to Shaw, or most likely they'll go to another base and they're going to be the squadron weapons officer. So they're teaching the teachers, they're going to teach the instructors. But the motto at weapons school is humble, approachable, credible. And that's a big thing. Being able to, you are it. You are the SME. You are the subject matter expert. Everyone knows, you've been handpicked and you've been put through a grueling course. So you don't have to prove yourself. And, essentially the Top Gun, right? Like you saw the bar scene. Spoiler alert if anyone's listening that hasn't seen it yet. Just pause.
Did you see it yet, Tonto?
No, but we got it. It's the show's more important. I'll see it.
Yeah, you see the bravado a little bit come out in the bar scene where they're competing. So essentially these are all Top Gun graduates. They've been hand selected to come back for this mission. Same deal would be if you picked a bunch of weapon instructors come back. There's always going to be a little headbutting and things like that. But I think inherently most weapons officers I ever worked with or came across, or my instructors, that humble, approachable, credible was something they live by. There's always one that gets through the cracks, but they know their stuff and they don't have to prove it by any kind of false bravado, if you will.
Gotcha.
Yeah, there was definitely some bravado in the movie. I loved it. I thought they did a great job. You loved it too?
Yeah, it was. I think one, we haven't had a movie like that. The Top Gun was the best recruiting tool for the Air Force. Yeah, I know it was a Navy movie, right? That was the best recruiting tool for the Air Force, hands down. We've needed something like that, and I don't know how much you guys talk about it. I did. I'm actually still a reservist. I was doing recruiting. I've actually just moved jobs again, but no one wants to be pilots these days. And I don't say no one. There are some, but it's a big interest in being a drone pilot, not being a pilot at all. And for instance, towards the end of my time active duty, it was fairly rare that you could take a 4-ship off station on the weekend. And that used to happen like back in the Reagan era and even in the 90s. You would take a 4-ship and you might take it from South Carolina and you go out to Texas. On your way there, you're going to stop into Montgomery. You're going to fight F-16s. You might go down to Florida, fight some Raptors. Like, it's a good deal to go off station, take the jets. You go to dissimilar fights, and then you're away from the mothership, so you're not having to deal with as much of the pain that comes along with being a home station. That went away for a long time, especially after sequestration. But what I saw, it started coming back where, hey, you can take a 4-ship cross country. The one caveat was you must stop at a pilot training base or you must go to the Air Force Academy. And part of that was to do a show and tell to try and get either kids, young men and women who are already in pilot training, to get them excited about flying fighters, or, plant the seed. Because what's happening, we saw this. You can stop me if we don't hear, but peeling back the onion, we saw the surge. No,
we love hearing this.
In Iraq. And part of that, right, a lot of money started flowing to the Army, before MRAPs existed, right? So we got to buy MRAPs. We got to buy all this up armor. Where's all that money come from? So one piece of the pie got chopped from fighters. Oh. At that same time, right, there was a big need for ISR, and there was an insatiable demand for UAVs. So I think at the time, like, maybe we had like 9, and don't quote me, like, it was a dozen caps of Predators flying around the world. And that was, again, you think like 05, 06, 07 timeframe. And it was just kind of this insatiable demand to have more UAVs. So there was a reflow of money to that. The up armor, the F-16, the A-10 were both going through major upgrades. So all these factors combine. You're not producing enough fighter pilots. You're actually taking guys out of fighter cockpits and sending them to fly UAVs. It's a TAMI 21 was the program it's called. So it's like, if you didn't have enough hours or you had too many hours, like, off to UAVs, and you would never be seen again.
Wow. So
out of all of that, this is to say, when the normal PCS cycling happens and you'd have 15 guys in a squadron, a third went on to another operational assignment. A third went to go fly white jets for an assignment. So T6s, T38s, to teach the new guys. And then a third would go to school or staff. What ended up happening, you'd send UAVs. A couple guys would go into, like, 2 guys would continue on to an ops assignment. No guys would go to white jets because they couldn't spare them. So now you have guys who are, and I was a T6 FAPE, so I was a brand new instructor hoping to go to fighters, but most of the other instructors, with the exception of 1 out of maybe 90, were all heavy guys. So you have this influence around all these young pilot training students who are surrounded by C-17, C-5, KC-10, KC-135 guys. Nothing gets them. They're great, but they're telling their story, right? And everyone loves their story, just like I'm out here spouting mine. But they would say, hey, go fly a heavy. Your C-17, you're going to take a crew around the world for 2 weeks. You're going to get all this per diem. You're going to tag, tax-free zones. They're selling. If you go fly fighters, you're going to get punched in the face every day. And oh, by the way, you're going to go deploy 6 months to some crappy location. Meanwhile, us and our C-17s, like, we're staying downtown in Dubai or whatever it might be. And they do some bad deals, but they kind of sold it. So you didn't have any salesmen, if you will. And I use air quotes for those listening, to pitch fighters. So it doesn't happen overnight. It's a death by 1,000 paper cuts, but you'll hear in the news now, fighter pilot shortage was a big thing a few years ago. Now it's just a pilot shortage in general. But the dynamics are changing. And so that's all to be said. Top Gun Maverick is a great movie.
That's
hopefully
a great review.
Hopefully it gets people excited about, wanting to be pilots, wanting to be fighter pilots.
That's amazing to me that because that's what, as I was a kid, that's what I wanted to be growing up. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I'm flying the little Matchbox, and then then going in special operations after. I just changed, but that's still, to me, that's the tier 1 stuff. It reminds me of the scene in Dodgeball when Vince Vaughn's talking to the kid that wants to be a cheerleader. He's like, "Wait, you want to be a cheerleader to get girls?" There are things. A lot of things have changed since I've grown up and been in high school. I said, "Man, a lot of things have changed since I've been in the military." Because that wasn't I want to go fly fuel around on a 135, a KC-135. It's a fuel transport plane. No, I'd rather do that than fly an F-16 and go kill the bad guy.
Yeah.
That doesn't make it. How can you? That is not a selling point to me. I guess the generations. There is the generations. I don't want to say, is it weak? Okay, I'm saying it's.
Yeah.
Have you gotten weaker, guys? What is you scared? You're more risk averse, of course, in the military. You've seen that. We become more risk averse because of the drones and UAVs. That I think those came out of the IEDs, and we were losing guys. And hey, well, let's put people. Then hey, well, less chance of people getting shot down. Really, you guys weren't getting shot down a lot anyway. You guys are really good in Iraq or even Afghanistan. But let's even be more risk averse. Let's put a UAV out there. Then there's no chance of anybody dying. I think now people are seeing it's biting us in the ass. It really is. So, what do we do? I mean, what does a recruiter do to get people back in the seat? I'm telling for you guys on the ground, we want somebody in an actual cockpit to talk to, saying, "Hey, this is where I'm at. I want to hear your voice. I don't want to have. Well, UAV is nice to have. It's better than nothing. An ISR, something with a Predator, something with a 275 or a something on a Hellfire on there, but." I still want to hear you guys. I don't want to hear there's an unmanned drone coming in. I'd rather there's a freaking screamer coming in right now, or there's an A-10. Get ready for that Gatling gun and hear that. Like it just, holy shit. Yeah, we're back in this fight. We got our backs. What do we do? I mean, is there something we can do?
That's a complex problem. And then, this is multifaceted because one thing, I kind of harp on, broad brush. We can't plan past 2 years. Like if you look at China, like China has a 100-year game plan and like they're executing it flawlessly. Like they are chipping away at it and they're doing it. When it comes to, the pilot thing and unmanned, like I had General Kelly, who's the air combat commander on my podcast not too long ago. And he used the term interchangeable, like interoperability. And he was speaking to the F-35 predominantly being interchangeable, like the difference between the F-35 and like the F-16. The F-16 is like the most proliferated fighter in the world. So many nations are flying it, but they're apples and oranges as far as capabilities. If you threw, me into a Danish, F-16, it's going to look different. The weapons, like they might be the same. They might be different. It just kind of depends. One is the F-35, like copy and paste, like it's software that can change between them. So you have to have the ability to rely on multiple nations, I think, if we're talking about a near peer threat, because you go knock on the door of China, like Russia's been kind of interesting. Like they kind of fell flat on their face. I didn't anticipate that. I thought it'd be a little bit.
Hey, you ran out of fuel. We say this all the time. How do you run out of fuel going from South Carolina to North Carolina? I mean, literally, that's how it was driving across. The logistical side we can see now was not where it needed to be. Yeah, obviously.
Without it, I have canceled missions in Iraq and Syria for tanker support. Right, it's like it's very rare, but. We're talking like our KC-135s, which are getting replaced by the KC-46, and the KC-10s going away first, and then the KC-135. But that's been around since the Cold War. Like the logistics, like without it. Now I said, so put me in the cockpit of the F-16. There's about 750 people standing behind me to make all that happen. One person doesn't happen, then it doesn't work. But to kind of get back to the questions, like what do we do? Like in the end. You want someone in a cockpit when it's an uncontested environment and you got troops in contact, the ability to like roll up and look down and see that tree line and instantly build your SA picture of what's going on in the battle space. You cannot, I can't get this from the screen, right? Like I'm just not that smart. Maybe someone can. And undoubtedly, like the technology will evolve where it will help that battle space situational awareness build for a pilot. Like if you think of UAV now looking at a screen like this, well, put them in a bubble, that has sensors like the F-35, they can see all around. That said, like it still probably needs to be a complement of having a human there. And maybe I have 5 of my drone buddies that are missile trucks with me. And then AI, you throw AI into it. Again, it gets to be a very interesting discussion. And obviously beyond this medium, but as far as what like a near peer fight would look like if we really, what we would need to win. Like if you go, if Taiwan looks up one day and there's just a horde rolling at them and we're going to go back them up, what would that look like? And what would it need to look like? I think my humble opinion, which I am uneducated when it comes to this and out of the know, but it would be a very tough fight. I mean, it's a global war at that point. And then also, if you look at how taxed our iron is alone, what a challenge that is. Now, there new things, space and cyber, that's something, but it goes both ways. Well,
it sounds like there's really not an answer. It's just we're coming back to everything else. It's a cultural answer. It's a societal answer. It's an answer that with our children's children now, making it cool to be a pilot again. I want to be a pilot like when I grew up. You're going to not go that route, but that's what I want to do. Now we're talking about contact from the air to ground. If we don't have enough pilots, a predator is not going to be able to take out a manned. Who's going to win that? I guess who's going to win that fight? And do you have those kind of? If we have people that are unmanned in these predators and ISRs, and we don't have enough pilots for the air, what about the dogfights in the air? We don't have enough pilots for those up there, and our enemies are going to. Are we not seeing that? I guess I'm not clear how we cannot have enough pilots and win fights at dogfights because we don't have enough people up there. We're not going to put a predator against an F-35 or an F-16. Are we? I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Are we?
Yeah.
Do you guys do those sort of things, those scenarios? Do you train like that? I've never heard of it.
I do have faith. There are a lot smarter people than me that, like, obviously I can't even hold a candle to, that are thinking about these problems. And that's a really good question. And like, who knows what it'll be? I know, like, we have some probably pretty awesome toys that are hanging out ready to be brought out of the toolbox, like if we need them. But like the question, and this is like pure, like, just a thought, it's like, if we looked at how warfare has evolved over the last 100 years alone, like things, like Civil War, we're going to line up and we're going to march at one another versus like what the tactics are today. Like, could, like, if are we sitting in the Civil War time frame, not, like, what is that next fight? So maybe, and you start talking hypersonics, if an AMRAAM can only go so far, an AIM-120, and that's where you're using, this long range fight that undoubtedly we always train, we start, kind of this, so we talk a training scenario, like defensive counter area, you're protecting a point like Taiwan, it's going to start out as far as you can. And if you're, declaring and you're able to identify hostile aircraft, you're going to shoot them at range and try to trick them and trick the forces as much as possible. Undoubtedly, there's going to be someone, and depends on the rules of engagement, that maybe you can't identify this aircraft. Maybe it's an airliner. Maybe it's, Joe Snuffy in a citation. Do you shoot him without a valid ID? Do you have to go to merge and visually ID him? So the tactics always kind of drive and training. Like, there's always going to be someone that you're gonna have to go to the merge with, and, you merge with him, ID him as hostile, and your wingman shoots him. But, like, that's how jet warfare has been, since the Korean War. Visually identifying an enemy based on, either seeing them, science, beeps and squeaks coming off their jet and your jet, or someone else being to positively identify them as a hostile and then pass that information to you so you can shoot them. That's all based in like a very relatively short distance. When we're talking, jets going 600 knots at one another. But if you back that picture up with hypersonics, I don't even know what that looks like. Is that like the next evolution? So then maybe it is drones, the radar technology with AI. I can say that the joke, not joke, right? But so the F-16, it's going through upgrades. It'll keep flying to 2045. AESA radar, so actively scan radar, which is, it's not a mech scan where it's going back and forth. The F-16 that I flew was a Block 50, and that had the most advanced radar in our Air Force. And we've sold some better ones, but it wasn't an AESA, it was a mech scan. So you could dual target track, so I could lock you and Ian. I could see both of you, and I could shoot both of you. But when I've locked into you, I can't see really anyone else. Now, data link, now if my buddy's there, they can also lock into stuff, and I can see what he's locked into. With an AESA radar, you can see lots of stuff. Like it's like going from a Nokia, flip phone playing Snake to, your iPhone 13. And you have like global SA, it's completely different. And, with the Raptor and the F-35, and you're in the F-16 and you're like, man, I'm hustling, like, just doing all this work, trying to lock into stuff. Typically, guys with more advanced radar, like the Raptor, I mean, they have a shoot list that's building like the information. It's information management that they're doing at that point. And that's like kind of the other piece. I did air shows, right? So I'm flying. My good buddy, who's one of my former student, he's flying F-35s. We're sitting next to one another, just doing our ground ops, like starting for the air show, which is a simplified ground ops compared to like, bombs and targeting pods and stuff like that. I'm over there sweating, flipping switches, going back and forth, doing all sorts of tests. He's just sitting there. I'm like, what do you do? And he's like, I'm just waiting for the computer to restart. I mean, it's like, it's completely different,
Wow.
But
which air shows have you done? I was just at the Memorial Day air show in Jones Beach, which is like an every year event for me. Yeah. It's awesome.
So I never did Jones Beach. So my last 2 years in active duty is a pretty good deal. 2.5 years, really. That's all I did. I was a demo pilot. So I did probably 45 air shows, across the U.S., Canada. Wow. I went to Colombia, Bahrain, UAE. So it was a pretty good deal. I never did Jones Beach. I know that I saw that they just had it. That's always a massive show.
It is. Yeah. Blue Angels were there. Last year was the Air Force Thunderbirds. It really, for the audience, if there's an air show by you, go. Because I went way too many years saying, I got to go. And now that I've, gone for these years, I'm like, this is an every year event. You will be completely amazed at what these guys are capable of. I wanted to get into your background a little. And so I was wondering, where did what's the origin of the call sign Rain?
I always tell people always ask that, right? So any fighter pilot that tells you the origin of their call sign right off the bat is lying to you. So
Chris always says this, with the Army too.
Yeah, it's a safe. It's a safety call sign. No, there's no cool guy call sign. You get it either because of a last name or you screwed up on something or your ethnicity. One of those three things right there. So
Rain sounds cool. I'll say
it does sound like a rain. It does sound like honestly, it sounds like an aviation. Bring the rain. Everybody wants to say that Tyson Beckford line from Transformers. None of us have ever said it, but we all want to say, roger that. Aim on orange smoke, bring the rain. Nobody's ever said bring the rain, but it would be cool one time for some guy on the radio to say that to a Spectre gunship or one of you guys.
So I'm cleared hot. Cool. Yeah.
Cleared hot, bring the rain. That is movie right there.
The best 9 line I ever had, which you can appreciate this, Tonto, was I was up in Erbil or outside of Erbil.
Oh, wow.
And, there's this vehicle, they were fighting a bunch of ISIS guys, but the 9 line passed and the mark is always NA in the 9 line. Like it's always NA. And this time it was Spooky's mark, which they had their 30 millimeter just going to town on this vehicle. And I'm like, well, capture that. I'm pretty sure it's dead, but if you want a 500 pounder, I'm more than happy to oblige. But, I don't know. So back to the call.
That's pretty freaking. So you had a Spectre hammer in it before you even dropped your 5, and you dropped a 500 on it.
Yeah, it was definitely. I wouldn't say. Oh, it was overkill. But these guys were they're bad guys. They want to make sure they're gone.
Well, it's the same reason why we do controlled pairs if we need to have somebody going down. Gray matter. You got to make sure he's dead. You don't want to get back up. Now I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's crazy to see some of the stuff that guys can walk away from.
Yeah, it is. You guys are hammering them with guns, and you still see them moving around. Like, how are these guys still living? I don't understand this, but I don't, dude. I don't hate you, and I wish I could have saw that. Oh man, can you see the 30 millimeter coming, and all of a sudden, boom! And, that would have been awesome. Awesome to see all that.
Yeah, this is easy to see. But sorry, I jumped away from the call sign, and not to divert there, but it's always something that's usually like humbling. And again, if anyone ever tells you right off the bat, it usually requires a few beers. I'll give like a hint. Mine, again, it was when I was going through mission qualification training. That's usually where you get it. Like when you show up to your first fighter squadron. You're going to have about 10 rides and the various different mission sets to get you checked out as a mission ready wingman.
Sure.
And undoubtedly you're going to do something. I'll say, the Air Force typically does a pretty good job because there is a rule, right? Like you don't want to have to yell your buddy's name across the bar and everyone look like, because if you see some of the Navy call signs and Marine call signs, you're like it's brutal, right? But they can't you can't go, hey, this is my buddy Bambi, and that's just being kind. I mean, there's some just terrible ones. But so the Air Force, I think, does a pretty good job. PC culture might have cleaned it up a little bit, but yeah.
So you're keeping Rain a not going to tell us.
It's okay. It's all right. We'll get a few beers in you next time.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Bring you on. No worries, guys. We're out of respect. And actually, John, are you still? Are you still heading up to E3? Are you going to do the?
That's okay. So Brian and I were supposed to meet this weekend. So Steve's another, the other aviation piece of this. He had a gear malfunction yesterday. So he's dealing with like getting the plane back to wherever it needs to go to get the maintenance. So we're actually, I don't know if Brian sent me an email. I said, hey, I'll fly down to Fort Lauderdale tomorrow, but we'll see. Yeah.
Well, I'm doing the E3 Firearms. John's doing the E3 Aviation side for the E3 Association. The reason I'm bringing that up is because we will be on a lot more podcasts, and Ian will be part of the E3 podcast too, where we will continually ask John about his call sign, and he will eventually tell us. We will keep hammering on it.
It's gonna be a special.
But hey, I guess I want to start. Do you have anything, especially for youngsters coming out, just a story where it was maybe, I don't think you probably ever wanted to quit, but was there a time where just going through difficult training and you just like, man, I don't know if this is what I want to do, or you had a doubt, or just physically it was pushing you to the point? How'd you get through it? Is there any story through training that you have that you can tell our listeners about?
There's one thing I always say, and I didn't come up with this, but this quote or whatever gets me through a lot of stuff. And it's like, there are those that have, then those that will. And typically when you're going through training, like everyone is going to bust a ride at some point. And so you're going to have to repeat a ride. There are some rides that are more significant than others and have, potentially more impact on your career, but undoubtedly, like you're going to have to repeat a ride. Like that's just part of it. So when that happens, obviously it's a blow, and depending on where it is in your training syllabus, like it can sting more than others. But again, there are those that have, then those that will. You're not the first and you're not the last. So I knew I'd say fairly early on that I wanted to fly. My dad was kind of a catalyst, pushed me that direction. And the more I got exposed to it, the more I wanted to do it. And I'm one of those that I think I can tend to I'm always kind of looking at 5 and 10 year chapters, if you will, at life. So it's like, hey, what's my goal in the next 5 years? What's the next goal in 10 years? And for me, lucky enough, I had just enough bumpers around me in high school to keep me going in the right direction. Definitely pinged off them, which I think we all do. And I knew I wanted to be a pilot. So essentially everything I did had that in the back of my mind and geared towards it. When it from jobs I sought after to, clubs I joined, etc. And it's a long road. But with that, having that long-term goal, when I got into pilot training, they say pilot training is like drinking from a fire hose. I enjoyed it. There's a lot of information you got to know. And I don't know, they say some people go through more stressful. I tend to thrive under stress, I think. Maybe my wife will disagree. I don't know. But I like having pressure. I like having a deadline. I like having challenges. Falling short of that, definitely going pilot training is probably the one. I did decent going through F-16 school, did decent, but I had to repeat a couple rides here and there. And those are that's always a blow when it's a blow to your ego. But again, I can always look back. I was like, this is what I've always wanted to do, right? I'm not just going to quit with one stumble.
Well, and it helps you. Nobody wants a guy in their squadron. Nobody wants a guy on their team that is going to quit when the going gets tough, because then you're definitely going to quit when the going is actually for real and it gets tough. And you've got things coming at you in the sky, or you've got mortars raining down, and you're going to quit. And so, no, that just shows your personality. You already had it, whether you knew it or not. You already had that ability to not quit under times of duress. And that's awesome. Where was it most stressful as far as training goes? Was it once you got to start to train to flight school, or was it going through when you first jumped in and you first got into basic training, or was it when you got to your squadron?
Probably honestly, probably the squadron. I think, I think the Air Force does a pretty good job of everything's a building block. When you start pilot training, they don't expect you to know how to fly a T6, and they don't expect you to know how to fly a T-38. Like the expectation is if they told you, hey, you need to understand the engine by day 5, right? Then you go learn about the engine. And that's what I tell my students, right? Like maybe, maybe conceptually you read it, you can't quite understand it. But when I ask you, like, what the fuel pressure is or whatever, right? That you know it. And then I can help explain as an instructor why that's important or how that works together. So it's a building block approach to get there. And you're probably going to test this. Like training is like, I don't know, it can be difficult going through. I thought overall, like it wasn't terrible. Like there were definitely like some points that were challenging, but it's not, pulling G's is physical, but it's nothing like going through Ranger school. Like here and like going through Ranger school, like, whew,
but even there, when you get used to it, it becomes like it's just, it sucks for the first little bit, but then you're like, okay, well, I'm here. It ain't going nowhere. All right. And it sucked, but it still was honestly, there still was enjoyable parts about it. So I think it's just the same, just maybe a little bit longer than pulling a 5G. I don't think I could pull a 5G without puking over myself. So there you go. There's our differences right there.
The different, but it comes back. I think the toughest part then was eventually when I got to doing that mission qualification training, because now it's the big leagues. Like this is for real. This is, hey, and like when I showed up my F-16 squadron, we knew we were probably going to deploy. We were going to go do like kind of a show of presence in the Middle East, just be there. And end of May, right? Like the world found out about ISIS. So very quickly our training, just show of presence deployment became, combat operations. Sure. And so, now you're doing it for real. And then it's a different factor when there's good guys' lives at stake and, you're going to go drop iron, right? Like making sure you put it in the right spot at the right time, when guys need it because lives depend on it. Like that's to me like the most stressful stuff.
Was it also because you actually had a squadron now, so you're building that brotherhood? Where training, you do have a brotherhood, but it's training. You're going to leave these guys eventually. If you make a mistake, it's training though. Here it's okay. I've got my guys here. They're watching me. I'm brand new, and I can't make a mistake because they're going to die if I do. I know it did with me. And once you get to Ranger Battalion, you get to your squad, it's a little bit different because this is the guys I'm going to be with for a while. And whatever happens, I'm with them and they're counting on me. We're training again. They're counting on me, but training's just a little different. It's just,
that's good. That's a good way of looking at it too. And I never really thought of it that way, but that is true because, it's everyone's lives kind of depend on one another. And this is your brotherhood. Your reputation. I always want to be that guy that could be counted upon, right?
Yeah,
like,
there you go. Yeah.
If there was some task, whatever, like, just give it to Rain, right? Like you don't have to worry about it or like coddle him. Like that's my goal is to always be the guy that can be counted on. And I think, especially when you get into like a fighter squadron, we get, right, like at that level, you never want to be the wedge or the lead back, so and undoubtedly it's going to happen to someone, and everyone's going to have their moment. You can't be a back-to-back wedge. So that's
and you're probably not there that long if that happens, right? Can you get I guess peered out, but once you're there, they've spent so much money on you. They're not just going to keep you there just because to make up for their investment. If you're not cutting it and you're not making the grade, are you gone, or do they keep you there, or they move you somewhere else within operations and you're just not going to be behind the stick anymore?
They're going to keep you flying initially. So you're going to do a 3-year assignment, most bases. What is going to end up happening? And this is, I don't know if anyone's like listening, fighter pilot, because it's not always the case. Like there's some good dudes that get raw deals. Like they get put in different positions, like in the wing because sorry, man. Like there was no one else. But then there's also guys who get put in specific positions out of the fighter squadron. The big thing, at least for me, so we have most bases have 2 to 3 fighter squadrons, maybe 1 fighter squadron, but there's always an operational support squadron. And the operational support squadron is going to have everyone from air traffic control, the airfield management, life support, like this whole slew. It's going to be a massive squadron of enlisted and officers, a fighter squadron, which is going to be predominantly all pilots with a couple enlisted.
Okay.
If you get sent out of the fighter squadron, and again, there are guys like I had to go do. I went and did a safety job at the wing. Like that was just at some point, the guys are going to get plucked to have to go fill these billets.
Yeah.
But that is like a subtle way. If there is someone who kind of needs to get
I get you.
managed out.
Yeah.
And then, the more, I would say aggressive way. And again, this is not all the case. Like we do like now it is a big focus sending guys to white jets. Like it used to be like, that was kind of the, I guess, touch of death. If you got sent to white jets, now it's like, we need guys to go to white jets so that they can get.
Okay, so now for all our listeners out there, tell them what a white jet is.
Yes,
what would that be?
Yeah, it's like a T6 and a T38. So that's the primary trainers for the Air Force. So when you show up, you're going to go fly T6 and then you're going to go fly T38. And I was in the beginning of the podcast kind of talking about, those are the trainers. So that you can also send guys to assignment. Now I'll say like, I was thinking like, my squadron that I deployed with, like out of that, there might've been like 2 guys, like one guy for sure who did some shenanigans multiple times. And then he stayed in the jet because we needed guys to stay in the jet, but I don't think he is no longer flying. So like eventually it works itself out for the most part.
Hey, I had a question. I've always wondered. I mean, in my career of doing this, in terms of podcasts, in terms of radio, and as Chris knows, like I've interviewed hundreds of guys, literally from the special operations community. Not a whole lot of pilots, though. Like Dan Hampton comes to mind. I've interviewed Dan Hampton a few times. Great guy. Hopefully, we'll have him on at some point. But because of that, I think I've learned a lot about the difference between the different branches of special operations. But in terms of pilots, what is the difference between the elite branches of, Air Force pilots, Army pilots? What differentiates them?
Well, the Air Force, right? Like
you can talk and you can talk shit. It's all right.
Yeah, well, that's getting ready to happen, right? So I was supposed to go to the Navy, right? They float around on a boat and they can float anywhere in the world for, forever. But they have planes to protect the boat, but they have the boat to move the planes and the planes to protect the boat. So what are we doing? But it was always interesting, again, like you always get different things that go on in Iraq and Syria and Operation Inherent Resolve predominantly. The Navy has that power projection. Like they can get anywhere they need to go in a matter of hours, and you can be putting air power down there. They're limited as far as like sustainment and how they can do it. Like the boat's got to go to port and do all its boat stuff. But I always joke. We had one mission in Syria. I was actually with my weapons officer, is a good friend of mine. And like, we just left Kobani, we handed off to a bunch of Hornets, and like, there was no less than like 3 guard calls. So like on the emergency frequency between the JTAC, the AWACS, just trying to call these guys off. And the Navy ended up getting kicked out of Syria because they kept flying into Turkey. And that was a big no-no at the time. So I was joking about the Navy, but like Army, and Tonto could probably speak better to this to me, but having that rotary wing that's integrated at the unit level, embedded, kind of same with like the Marine Corps, like the Marines have fighters and planes to support the guys on the ground. Air Force, a mix of tactical and strategic level stuff, right? Tactically, you get chopped over and you're working for a JTAC for a vol period. Strategic, you got a B-2 that can fly across the globe down, wherever you want to do a power projection. So it's a mix of all of them. And it's fun to go out and do these large force exercises, and especially when you mix in the Navy, the Marines, and the Army into it. I'll say like my interaction with the Army, I did MC-12 deployment as well, doing ISR, integrating and lasing for Apaches. So that was like a very tactical level integration there. It was pretty awesome. And then Air Force F-16 time, like doing red flag exercises, bringing the Navy out, bringing the Marines out, briefing with them, integrating them into the air fight or whatever they're going to do, like bringing, F-18 Growlers out, doing jamming, doing like my primary mission set as an F-16 guy was SEED, suppression of enemy air defenses. So going out there, kick the door down, get everyone to look at you, shoot at you, so that everyone get in and out unharassed, and then you can close the door. But the Growler has that mission set as well it's bigger, it's fatter, it's slower, it's got 2 people in it.
It's
got to stay way back, but it's got beeps and squeaks and stuff that we don't have in the F-16. So integrating and relying, on the capabilities, strengths and weaknesses that each of us have, that's the challenge. And if you can successfully do that, then you can go out there and fight, because no one can do it all, I guess.
Is there, aside from task force in the Army, aside from 160th, and I thought there was, because the Air Force, whenever we did stuff with the Air Force, as far as getting transported with her, with C-130s, C-17s, or occasionally F-5s, there was a special operations side within the Air Force. But the fast movers, they don't fall underneath that. You just take over everybody, and if somebody needs assistance, whether it's a special operations team or a conventional team, it doesn't make a difference. Or do the special operations team get priority, or it's just mission dependent? Whatever the mission is that how that works within the fast moving community?
So in the fast mover community, it does, because there's Air Force Special Operations Command, which has C-130s, helicopters.
We use those. We use those immensely. The Pavlovs and all, or however you want to say it. And I hated those guys, because they'd always make sure that even if we didn't need to in their training, they're going back and forth. You knew as soon as you got on, here they go, and they're simulating turbulence while you're trying to put your suit on. But I didn't hate them; they were awesome guys. But they did like the fun. But I just never knew that with the fast movers, if there was something that was dedicated to special operations or not. No,
it's going to be one of those things that you integrate, and it did it several times. Whether the Chaotic Combined Air Operations Center, which is they're in Qatar, and that's every day there, whatever assets are in theater. So I went into a 3-week rotation there when I was deployed, but it was me sitting next to a B1 guy, sitting next to an F-15 guy, sitting next to a Navy guy, sitting next to an A-10 guy. And then what happens, everything is getting pumped into the KAOC. Guys are requesting air support. There are users that are always going to get priority, and then everyone has a different priority level. And then what's going to end up happening is, based on the needs and what the requirements are, they're going to get chopped off. Now, I'll say I saw it where certain users are only going to want certain planes.
Sure.
Yeah. I know when we deployed our weapons officer, right? Again, he's underneath the commander and the DO, and I'd say informally, like the number 3 in the squadron. He got the phone call from an unknown number one night and said, "Hey, I need you to be here in a day or two." And then, that user went through everything as far as, the AOR, what was going on. And then he came back and then kind of passed the words. And then inside the squadron, there can typically, like ours, let's say everyone flew those missions. There was no difference. Okay. There might have been some scheduling when we knew, hey, these lines, it's only going to be these guys. Okay. And then we did have some, missions where it was going deep into bad guy land and supporting, tier 1 users, that it's going to be a specific set of guys in the squadron, so you can kind of know hey, we don't have to worry about this. And then briefing to the VTC. I went down to the Horn of Africa for a bit there too. And, all the guys that you're dealing with there with short sleeve button down plaid shirts and cargo pants. It's they I guess they get who they get, but there is internally probably some selection process that most fighter squadrons are thinking about for the different mission sets that are going out there. And there are different qualifications. If there's some kind of specific need and not everyone has that qualification, then obviously the guys who are qualified are going to get selected in. And
you're talking weapons qualification, or you're talking about a terrain qualification? So you're flying up in Tucker Gar is a little different than flying down in Baghdad, because are there those kind of qualifications? Or as far as terrain goes, everybody's got to be qualified. Doesn't matter if you're below sea level or obviously below sea. Well, you can still, they're still below sea level, and you're going Jordan. In the water. That's what I thought.
You can go, and everyone's got to do it when you're there. So that I would say is essentially a basic qualification. There's NVG low, so night vision goggle low, which is
holy crap. Night vision flying at Mach whatever with night vision.
real low. Wow. So it's not something you do very often. We all got no one was qualified in our squadron, right? It's one of those qualifications that, and even close air support, for where we were. Close air
Sure.
support was not on our doc statement. It's one of those things that while it can be it's a very complex and dynamic environment when that's happening, we kind of chalk it away that, hey, like if we need to pull this, book off the shelf, we'll do that. But doing defensive counter air and SEAD is so much more complex. This is where we're going to spend our time. This is our primary mission set. It's our case, like the SEAD and the DCA book kind of got put up on the shelf, but we still needed that to a certain extent when on this last deployment. But then close air support was like, hey, we got to get everyone 2 simulators. We got to get everyone at least like 2 rides. We're going to get everyone an MVG low ride. So it was like getting the instructors requalified and then getting, the flight leads qualified and the wingmen qualified, all to do MVG low before the deployment. So all those things kind of get chipped away and knocked out. But when it comes to like weapons qualifications, so on our deployment, this is kind of another kind of unique one. GBU-39 is a 250 pound class bomb. The F-16 had not dropped them before we left. They dropped them in test. It's an awesome little weapon that can fly a great distance. And if you got Cat 1 coordinates for, the southern window, third pane on the, whatever story, like if you got good coordinates, like you can put it through there. Overpressure it creates is amazing. But like there, we had one guy who was, hey, this mission is calling for GBU-39s. We're going to load them up. You're selected to go out there and you're going to drop GBU-39s. And then we started carrying GBU-39s. So, and then everyone's kind of like, hey, you're reading about GBU-39s. Undoubtedly it's military, so there's a PowerPoint.
Of course.
Yeah. Go through and do that. But and basic level, pretty much everyone, when you get your mission ready wingman, you're qualified on most of the weapons that you can drop. If there's something like a Maverick that you don't do very often, everyone will get requalified or get qualified on that. Flying around like northern Afghanistan versus flying around Baghdad is very different. And some of that, like you're qualified. The experience level varies, right? And
you're always OJT. It's always on the job training. So you're qualified, but until you've done it, it's not. I think that goes with anything as far as difficult training. You're always qualified, but until you actually do it, it's even walking up the side of the Panjshir in the Panjshir until you actually do it, and you have the shards of rock that look like glass. Yeah, you don't know, but I'm sure it's the same, bro. I'm sure it's. I mean, I can't imagine. Still, I'm not a pilot. I can't imagine how different it would be. I can't imagine. I just would never know. But I just got to assume it's still, once you're in theater and you do it, it's like, okay, you're going to get it, but it's that first taking off and wow, this is weird. All right, this is going to be difficult, but then I'm sure everything just kicks in. It just becomes second nature to you.
And every time, right? Like you learn something, you get a new tool for your tool bag. I can say I was actually flying in near Kobani, and this is probably like 2 months in our deployment. So we're fairly familiar. It's relatively flat terrain, or you got a pretty good baseline. Obviously, there's no cell phone towers, and skyrise is sitting up there. But it was a weather deck, and we had a pretty good estimate that the weather was like the tops of the cloud or bottom of the clouds were like at 2,000 feet. We're above it. I was actually with a guy who it was a JTAC at one point. He went and did a tour with the regiment.
Wow. Yeah. We got great guys that come and live with us. They're I love them.
Yeah. And down there is like, they couldn't generate coordinates and they were taking a lot of fire. So he's like, hey, how do you feel about, we'll just let down. We'll kind of self-create an approach and we let down and just go screaming under the weather. And like, again, it's flat terrain. You wouldn't want to do that in northern Afghanistan. Sure. Like, not going to work out. But they're like, all right, hey, based on experience being here, like you're kind of comfortable with it. Like we can smartly like do this, go make a lot of noise, and maybe we'll be able to capture, something in the targeting pod that we can get a mark on and come back around and do something with. So everything is just it's another tool to throw in the tool bag.
Wow. Yeah, this is awesome talking to you because, as I said earlier, we don't really get to speak to a lot of guys with your experience. So it's definitely a real treat to do this. I want to make sure we get into what you're doing now. I mean, as Chris said earlier, E3 Association, which people can visit at e3association.com. There's going to be a lot more on the horizon at E3 Association on Instagram. But the big thing that you've really been up to is the Afterburn podcast. Yeah. I have to say it's a natural transition because I'm sure Chris will agree with me. You have an awesome voice. You have a great setup too. I think you have the best voice of anyone we've had on before. So
you got that Barry White Quiet Storm voice, dude. I always think
he does. It makes sense that that's what you're doing. So how did the podcast come to be? I see that it's become really successful, and for people who want to check it out, get into what you're doing with Afterburn.
Well, I mean, I appreciate the kind words. There's obviously a lot more guys with a lot more experience than me. I just got a little fraction of it.
But you have the voice.
Yeah. It's practicing the radio voice. That's the main thing. You got to sound cool on the radio. I had this sidebar, and I'll tell it. I'm good at sidebars.
We are too. So.
One of my first, so I was a T6 instructor. I was brand new. I was a lieutenant. I came back. Essentially like one of my first students that was assigned to me. We're out flying, and we went to an airfield that was further out we normally don't go to. But we had to go there. And so we're coming back, and then, T6 is, essentially brand new. There's like no problems, like no big issues or known issues. You're always worried about the engine quitting, but that's about it. So coming back, I see the fuel flow just starts jumping around. Well, fuel flow jumping around is not a good thing, especially in a jet, let alone one that only has one engine. So we start climbing to get on profile to come back and land. So undoubtedly best landing of my life, yada, yada, yada. We get on the ground safely. But my student, at the end, we're debriefing, like, what was the most important thing you learned in that whole experience? And he goes, well, always have a plan. I said, no. He's like, you got to sound cool on the radio, because if you don't make it, that recording is going to be played in front of thousands of people for eternity, and that's how you're going to be remembered. So you got to sound cool to the point of impact. You better sound cool.
You got like that, like Bill Burr when you're on that plane in the turbulence, man. Squish that shit down. Be a man. Push that shit down. I know we're going along. We're going a little bit long. We'll cut you here in a second.
And we got to get into his podcast.
Yeah, got to get in the podcast. Yeah. So we'll get in the podcast. And then I got two things to ask you, and then we'll let you go.
No, it's I enjoy it. Like, obviously, talking and doing this stuff is a lot of fun. That's really like where the podcast came from. My last 2 years, I mentioned doing demo. I met a lot of incredible people. Not that I didn't meet a lot of incredible people during my Air Force, like, tactical days, if you will, because I brought them on the podcast. But meeting all those people, I kind of had like the aha moment of like, there's so many stories out there, and everyone has a story, that if you don't have a medium to capture it, other than an Instagram picture or whatever it is, like, there's having this long format, I think, is really important to go out there and try and capture the story. So again, I've joked about it before. Like, I couldn't spell podcast, but I mentioned them all. I was like, hey, let's start a podcast. I had no idea. Good friend of mine, Matt Jolly, has Warbird Radio. He's an air show announcer. He knows this world. He kind of is like, hey, you need to buy this, and that, do this.
Is he the guy who does the Jones Beach Air Show, or
Matt? He has done it. Him, Rob Ryder.
Is he an older guy? Like,
Rob Ryder, I think, did it. I was thinking like Rob. So Rob has a phenomenal voice. He was in Shawshank Redemption. He has a small part in that. But I think I have to look. I think Rob does Jones Beach, because there's several kind of key air show announcers that go around the country, and they all tend to return to the same show. Like, they're all friends.
Yeah, the guy who does Jones Beach is amazing. And that's the thing. If you go to an air show, the announcer makes it. I feel like they really, because you don't know what you're watching unless you have that guy really guiding you through it. But yeah, back to what you were saying in terms of the stories. Because actually, I want to jump in there and just say real quick, I do think it's important, because the guys that Chris and I have talked to, and the guys I talked to with like my former jobs and everything. Yeah, it's so awesome that you have hours and hours of content of these guys. And that's why it's cool when we bring on a Vietnam veteran, because they didn't have that outlet. Yeah. And the very few remaining World War II veterans, like, we got to get these stories out there. It was unheard of for these guys to write books back then. Yep. So to get them on podcasts, I think, is so important. But yeah, back to what you're saying about Afterburn and what you're doing.
That's it. I kind of like, hey, I think I'm going to do a podcast, I had my buddy Matt kind of help me out, get going. I couldn't come up with a name. I recorded my first 2 episodes. One was with my buddy Loco is an F-22 guy. He actually just took over a F-22 squadron. It was so terrible. I was like, Loco, man, I can't release this. Like my audio's like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like it would be a disservice. We still need to re-record that episode at some point. But it's trying to figure it out. Like, again, the setup and the editing and all that is a whole new world to me. But I mean, inherently that's kind of, it's pretty simple. Like, I think being able to capture these stories, I don't think I've done a great job. I was like, I want to get more Vietnam guys. I've had 2 Vietnam guys on my podcast, but as you said, like, and they didn't write books. There wasn't this 24/7 news outlet. There wasn't all this social media where guys are sharing what's going on. And obviously it's a very different time. I had one, Hank Dietering on, very recently. I mean, this guy, he was a Marine, like close quarter combat, his like the Marines, like, hey, guess you're still a rifleman. So, he's flying A4s and A6s in Vietnam, bounce between those. And oh, by the way, like defending the base when it gets breached, and like, man, it's sporty. So capturing those stories, otherwise they just go unheard and untold. And that, kind of Tonto brought up too, like challenges, like that's another aspect. Everyone has gone through challenges. So being able to hear what these people have done and accomplished, undoubtedly they've had some kind of challenge and overcome. And the last name drop, Caleb Brewer, who's a Green Beret I had on my podcast. I met Caleb while I did the Huntington Beach Air Show. I've never surfed. I wanted to learn how to surf. We had like 5 days off in Huntington Beach, California. Amazing people. We had several people like, hey, we'll take you surfing. So I had a team of 12 guys. We show up at like 7 a.m. after the air show, like the next day. Like the fire chief was out there. He was like getting his morning surf in. Like, what are you guys doing? He's like, well, I'll help teach. We had like 6 people just randomly start helping us teach. And I'm over there. I am paddling as hard as I can. I'm dying. Like, I'm going to drown here. This is the end. This is where it's over. Caleb is over there on his surfboard surfing. So Caleb, he stepped on a pressure plate IED in Afghanistan, lost legs below the knees. He's a big adaptive fitness guy now. Caleb Brewer, great individual, was like super inspiring to me. But I'm like, man, this, like, to me, these are the stories that need to get out, because I can have a really
sounds like a guy we have to have on.
I connect you guys, because Caleb is a great dude. But it's like, if I ever kind of feel bad or like down on myself, or like, oh, this is like hard, like suck it up, Buttercup. Like Caleb, like, to me, that seems like a very challenging thing. I can't imagine going through that trauma, rebounding, and then, he's very successful now and is doing a lot of great things. So to me, he's inspiring, and being able to share his story is very cool.
No, I feel the same thing when we have guys on like Matt Waters or Mike Schlitz or Ilana Duffy who've lost limbs. I think Chris does too. I mean, I'm totally inspired by those stories.
Persevere. You teach the stories of overcoming adversity are everywhere within the veteran community, and just everywhere within society. But it does with the veterans, I think, puts things in perspective too when you're having a bad day. Now, we all have bad days. I'm not going to downplay somebody and their bad day just because they've lost a limb. They haven't lost a limb. Say, oh no, you just need to suck it up. You're being up. I'm not. We all go through things differently, but it does give at least some perspective and also shows that you can overcome it. You can overcome whatever you're going through. You just have to have the mindset to do it. My 2 things, brother, and I do want to have you on because we really didn't get into any. I wanted to see if there was any special mission you did and that stuck out with you in Iraq or Afghanistan. Oh shit, we got time. When do you got to go? When you got to go?
Yeah, if you want to chat, I mean, let's chat.
Well, give me about 10 more minutes, because we'll do a couple questions. This first one's first. The first Top Gun. Can you really do inverted and flip some dude off? Is that possible over anything another plane? Seriously, because that's not. I don't think that's possible. But nobody's ever told me for sure. Is there
I couldn't do it. I'm not that skilled. I will say I did a lot of.
Does the plane have that ability?
So flying inverted is super uncomfortable. Before I was the demo pilot, I had a buddy. We went out and we fought, and he was like, "Hey, let's see if we can, as we cruise out of the airspace, be inverted." It is super uncomfortable and terrible. I got a lot of videos out there on YouTube now, and at the time, like, I got very comfortable just being inverted, and so I would hang inverted. Now flipping inverted, 3 feet from another plane, I could not do it. I'll say. Frank Wisner, he was Blue Angel. I guess the Blue Angels do like narrator, then 6-5. That's kind of how they progress through it. So Frank, he did that progression, went away, The Blue Angels had a crash. He came back and did it again. And it's kind of funny, like him not wanting to do it, but he actually like he was the guy, like the low stuff in Top Gun, like where they're going like over the desert. That's him.
Wow.
He can do that. Like Blue Angel, I don't know if it's 5 or 6, whoever flips inverted, like they do that. That's their deal. The Thunderbirds do it side by side. So when like looking at the crowd, like it looks like they're inverted, but they're separated. My wife was actually asking the other day, like, so F-16's its side stick doesn't move. It moves like 1/10 of an inch. So the challenge with that versus the F-18, the Blue Angels, they actually weight the stick. So you always have to have a positive pull on the stick. Allows for more finesse. It's also a lot more work when, always like maintaining that. But F-16, if you want a 9G pull, it takes about 25 pounds to command 9Gs if you're at the appropriate speed. But what does 25 pounds feel like? Like, is it this? Is it that? Like, I don't know. So I'm saying, like, I'm trying to rip the stick off every time I'm trying to pull 9Gs. But now when you come in close and you're doing that, like, you don't have that feedback. So you can't get as close, I don't think. The Blue Angels fly a lot closer than the Thunderbirds. The fly-by-wire, the flickus of the F-16 and kind of prevents it and kind of do some squirrely stuff. You still can, 3 feet still pretty close when you're talking about.
I would say, that's why I thought maybe your afterwash or something that would cause it because you're that close. That was a movie, but that's cool to know that the plane can do that close inversion. Yeah, and you can take a Polaroid and all that other cool stuff.
Yeah, if you're a good enough pilot, which is not me, could do that for sure.
But now this one's a little bit more serious, and this is kind of a personal question for me. When we were in Libya and we were actually in contact with 555th Fighter Wing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any buddies there. I don't know what you can talk about, but we knew that they were moving and then they got stopped. I mean, it just was like it was like a beehive just going crazy. And all of a sudden that beehive just disappeared and it was just silence. I know why it happened.
Yeah.
Do you know any of your buddies there that were there that can even give any more information or you've talked to, or even their feelings of, because you guys don't leave us guys on the ground behind. You don't. And I know you don't. I know it probably hurt a lot of them, but is there any information, just even for me personally, that you can give without, I don't want to get you in trouble. I don't give a shit. I could care less about the agency or any of that anymore if they already hate me enough. But I just, my personal, just so I can always gain more closure in what took place and what didn't. Do you know what happened, or do you have any information of what took place and what they were what guys were being told on the ground as they were getting spun up to come to us? And I know where they're at. That was our QRF element. Yep. I knew there was an element at Suda Bay as well. I do know there were at least 2 planes there because that's where we would stay before we'd go into Libya. Their planes were right there. And that was our job as operators, is to know where our QRF elements were. Do you know, was there Sigonella elements? I know there was a MU there, a Marine Expeditionary Force that was trying to, and also Spain, and the SIF team was coming out of Croatia. But if you don't, you don't. But do you have anything maybe help me gain some closure on that stuff? So
I don't have any firsthand knowledge of that. So everything I'm going to say is assumptions and my best guess. I have one buddy, one of my weapons officers. He actually just took charge of the squadron. The gamblers were in Libya. They were on their way to Red Flag, and they turned around, and then they were in Libya for the actual, approved conflict, right?
Approved conflict.
And then, I can. Here's my best guess, because I set alert several times. Like when we're down the Horn of Africa, set alert, launch. You have an idea, right? The unit you're working for, the guys on the ground, but then there's so many things in between you and the cockpit and whoever's making the decision to say go. So those filters, my guess is they probably got told it's a cancel. Like they don't need us. Right. Wow. Because, they're not, it wasn't on, they don't have a live feed and they're not seeing it, it'd be a different story. That if you're hearing the radio chatter and these guys are getting overrun, that's a whole different, that's, I guess when you hear that's when guys tend to make a career decision, at that point. But my guess, if there was guys sitting alert in Sigonella or Suda Bay or wherever they might've been sitting, that to them, they got put on, a certain alert status and then never got alerted, so unfortunately they're probably at the gym, right? Because they just, that information, it's at decisions being made, at the KAOC. I mean, that's, obviously the politics that go into it. And then the 4-star, 3-star, whoever is in that decision tray, they're probably getting told by, their boss, no, it's not a go. So I think, that's
just, no, you don't have to go expound any more on that. Cause that's Aviano was our base. We knew where they're at. That's what our job is. We know where the main head is, and we know where all the detachments are and all the other guys are at, because we are such a small element that if we get attacked by a big element, we can't defend them for long periods of time. There's only a few of us. So I assume that as well. I still would like always, and I have my ideas of who gave the stand down order, but man, that's just, it helps me just to kind of I'm still always putting pieces together. Really trying to put it all together.
And I think with that, there's always those things that I think there are plenty of stories. I got several buddies who have hung it out there and they've thrown the rule book to the wayside because guys need them. And every time, like there's a lot of really heroic stories out there of guys dipping into the valley in weather in Afghanistan because guys are cut off, surrounded, and they're going to get overrun, and they're going to do whatever they can to stop that. And so I think with like that awareness, and again, our former OG, he was 05 when Libya kicked off. Remember there was an F-15 that went down.
The Libyan and Benghazi. Actually, that's what we were getting ready to christen the English-speaking school, American Corner. Hillary was going to come in to meet that guy that saved the pilot. We were actually doing all the preparation to make sure it was safe. Yeah, there was a picture of her on the wall of that guy that saved the pilot. He was opening up called the American Corner, and that's one of the reasons Ambassador Stevens was there at that time as well. Yeah, I remember that.
Well, I mean, again, it kind of comes to the. I know someone ended up strafing to kind of keep guys away from him that shouldn't have been strafing, and I don't know. I just want to say I had in my story. This does not even compare to anything, right? So here's the next thing is like we're at Kobani, and I was with my squadron commander at the time, and shows of force were no longer allowed for a certain period of time. So ISIS, after like war kicked off, like we hammered them, and then about like 3 months later, they started finding more AAA from the Iraqis. So there actually was a limited air threat, and then they found a bunch of SA-7s. So now they're doing that. So and then a Dutch F-16 took a 7.62 round through the intake. GE motor just kept chewing it up. So there you go, GE. So we stopped doing shows of force unless it was required. Like guys, like that was the only option, and stopped doing yo-yo ops. So yo-yo ops is where you got two, you're out there as a formation. One guy's going to go to the tanker while one guy stays on station. And if stuff's happening, can drop bombs, and then you're high-fiving back and forth. So someone's always on station. Yeah. We stopped doing that. We had a Jordanian pilot go down who got captured by ISIS, and subsequently he was murdered. So we kind of said, hey, based on the limited number of Americans on the ground or coalition members, we're essentially supporting YPG. Like the risk doesn't warrant that. Now you can do it if you need to, but I said we found ourselves doing shows of force one day, but like they knew there was an SA-7 in the area that they had picked up on the ICOM chatter, but we still did it, right? Because they need it. It's like, hey, it's warranted. Like you're gonna make this. We're gonna throw the rule book out, right? And I guess there's like a little asterisk saying you better have a good reason for doing it. And I think inherently most fighter pilots are that way. Like the things are usually through the floor, and it's a matter of like making sure that they go through the floor at the appropriate point for the right reason and doing that. So subsequently B1 got shot at about 2 hours later. So I was like, maybe it wasn't the smartest thing.
But I don't doubt the guys, and we didn't have direct comms with them. We had comms with whoever the HQ was on the main 10 Alpha. So I just didn't know if they had actually knew. I guess finding out, somebody actually they knew what was going on, or the lead squadron commander knew, and then they were just told, no, you're not going, and this is why. And I would love to know if there was ever that conversation, just to just for closure. So I'm going to place blame. I know who to play.
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't make a difference, but I know we know who the fault was.
Right.
But it even just helps me. It's like, okay, they did know, and those guys were really just they were going to come, and some head shit said, no, you're not going. And I do know about throwing out the rule book. We threw out the rule book to leave ourselves, and we lost our jobs because of it, but it was still the right thing to do. I don't know a pilot that wouldn't do that if they knew what was going on and they heard the radio, we need you, we need you, we need you. I don't know any pilot that I've never heard of one that didn't come to the aid of somebody that needed them.
It's like, I've never been in that scenario, right? But I would like to think that if I was facing that scenario, like, to me, it's like, I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror, right? Like what's going to keep me awake at night? And it's like, if I'm letting Americans die, that's not where I want to be. So I don't know. And again, I try to like think back that time period. I don't know when the dust settled that enough information got out to the public of what had happened. If undoubtedly their guys, if they were sitting alert, that either the next day or 6 months then became aware of what happened. Right. So yeah.
I just, my two questions, and that's really it as far as questions go. I just want to say, one more thing. I guess on the E3, I want to make sure we touch on that. I know it'll probably come out later, but E3 aviation, what is that, and what's it going to do? Is there anything for the members? Can you talk a little bit about the E3? And then, bro, then I'm done. Then you can go.
Well, I mean, it is super in the early stages. Brian and Steve talking about the launch. I don't know if it's going to happen the Q4 of this year or Q1 of next year. I know there's, I think we're all really excited about it because Steve, civilian pilot background, but I mean, flies all over the place and has a wealth of knowledge. As I mentioned, he had a gear problem yesterday, but he like trucking back and forth to Bahamas, doing stuff that, it's a little bit different than like what I do or have done. Like I'm always flying, I now fly big old planes, but, in F-16, like you're following the tanker wherever you're going. They've planned, they're talking on the radio to the different controllers. They got dip clearances, etc. He's like planning flights into the Bahamas and these other countries and stuff, just like doing cool stuff. He's got an awesome YouTube channel out there with a ton of followers and just produces a lot of aviation content. So blending kind of the military and the civilian aviation side of the house together. And then I have a big interest in general aviation. I started flying when I was 16. So I'm trying to get back into that. So there might be some like, me going through learning how to do some of the basics again, which would be kind of fun to watch me stumble through. But yeah, sharing our aviation knowledge, experience, bringing people together who just have a wealth of knowledge to share. I don't know. I'm excited about it. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun.
And will the members get to fly? I mean, is there going to be possibility where they can go through classes and possibly learn how to and get their pilot's licenses?
I think everything is on the table right now.
That's awesome.
Everything is on the table because again, we want to create the best, experience, especially for aviation enthusiasts. And I think that's, from cradle to grave, that's from just talking about stories to actually going out there and flying and doing it. So it'll be pretty. I'm excited about it. This is awesome. Yeah, it'll be very cool.
Awesome. If we can merit, I'll go ahead, Ian. I'm sorry.
I mean, I was just going to say it's in the early stages, and I just want to make sure we keep plugging it. E3association.com.
And if we can marry that up where we've got the firearms teams here and you're out there and we can get to Harvey Point or somewhere like that. And I can start teaching CAS missions with you guys. Wouldn't that be great? A3 awesome. Members, we're going to teach you how to call our support.
Wouldn't that be awesome? Do some 9 lines back and forth.
That would be so sweet. We're coming together, the E3 Farms Aviation Experience. For this weekend only, we're going to teach you how to drop GBUs on small targets. You know how many signups we'd have? We'd have the members. We would have enough space for the members.
Yeah. Oh man, that'd be fun. Yeah, I'm excited about this. It's a really cool opportunity. I know that. I don't know. It's something that's pretty unique, and to be a part of it's awesome.
It is. I agree. I'm very proud, and it was very cool to hear that you're on. That's when Brian said, "Hey, yeah, John's coming on. He's this F-16. I got you. That's all you need to say." All right. But bro, I appreciate it. And thank you for being candid on the things you talked about. And thank you for humoring me with the, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Just, I know there's some things you can talk about. I I didn't think less of any of the pilots or any of the guys that were trying to respond to us. It does help me, always going to help me get more closure and just find out what's going on, what actually was said. from the guys that were there that we were trying to reach. And so I appreciate that, bro. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
Yeah. I wish I knew more. I wish I had better answers. I just know that I think I can honestly say that if anyone, sitting in a jet that heard that going on, it'd be a different story. And you saw like all these C-17 crews. They just actually out of New York, because you're up in New York, right?
Currently in Connecticut, but originally New York. I'm right there. I'm 30 minutes.
Same spot. But Newburgh, New York, which I did a show there, ironically enough, C-17 Guard Unit. They just awarded a crew with a bunch of air medals with Valor, and then one Distinguished Flying Cross for these guys who took a 160th bird into Kabul when like 6 C-17s turned around when it was falling, and 20 operators, because their mission was to go out there and pick up stranded Afghans and Americans that needed to get back to evacuate. So these dudes went in there, and then everyone and their brother has seen all the videos that came out of Karzai International there with. So those guys hung it out there for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's a good story. Good story here. Maybe get one. If we can find one of those guys from that mission, I'd love to have him on talk about that.
I just got one guy's name. I'm actually going to reach out to him. I'll try to see if I can get someone to.
You have him first. He's your guy. You take him first.
It's good to it's good to capture these stories and hear it. Otherwise it's just a blip. Best case scenario on the news, maybe a picture, but there's so much more that when you start pulling back the onion that is worth. And
and I also think it's good that all these and D, who edits our video, has said it, all these military podcasts are collaborating together, and I think it helps all of us, because I think all of us are trying to expand our audience. But in terms of E3, just looking at the website now for those interested, I mean, it's not just firearms and aviation. You're going to have E3 off-road, E3 firearms, of course, E3 overland, E3 camping, and E3 aviation. So this is going to be great. For those of you who want to check out the podcast, of course, it's the Afterburn podcast. It's available everywhere. theafterburnpodcast.com. You can follow John on Instagram at rainwaters27. We really appreciate you going along here with us. Thanks, this was awesome. A lot of great stories. You might have seen me taking notes as we're doing this, and it's because I'll timestamp whatever we're going to put on Instagram or YouTube, and there's so much here that we're going to have to put up more than just one little clip here or there, because I think between the Top Gun stories and the combat stories, there's just a lot here. This interview is exactly why we do this podcast. I think people who listen, this is what they listen for.
I'm sorry, I'm not ignoring you. I'm following you now. That's right. I'll forget when we walk away. Oh shit, we're done. I'm gonna look on my phone. I'm so actually, I wanted to follow you. I hadn't followed you yet on Instagram, so I just did.
Awesome. No, I appreciate it. This was fun. So I enjoyed it. Tonto, I know I think we'd scheduled next week. I need to follow up with you.
Yeah, just shoot me the link. Well, yeah, I'm good to go. I just need the if I don't have it yet, I'll check my calendar. But if you don't resend me the link,
okay, I'm around. I'm going actually down to Benning. I'm going to go down to the regiment.
Are you
Wednesday? Yeah. So I'm working. Brad Thomas at all. So he was a ranger.
Yeah, I know. Everybody knows of Brad. And him, but I've never served him. But yeah, Brad. Yeah, Brad.
So I had Brad on the podcast, and then we got another. We kind of have a project in the works right now, which I can't spill the beans on it just yet, but. Going down with him, another guy, we're kind of planning some things out. We got a big project we're kind of putting together, which would be a podcast form. And so I've never been down there, so I'll be the Air Force guy. They're like, hey, this is
awesome. Hey, throw us Brad. I don't have Brad's info. Can you throw Ian Brad? Because I'd like to have Brad on. I love having other Rangers on. Yeah, Brad's been around a long time, and he's another legend. That's Ranger legend. That talk the talk and walk the walk. So I'd love to have him on as well.
Yeah.
He's
absolutely
a tremendous Ranger. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. And I'll be in touch. All I need from you is a high resolution photo. There's probably some on your website though, and that's really it.
Yeah, whatever you need. I got plenty of photos. So
perfect.
Hey, and for us, if you need guests, hit us up. I will give you all our military guests too that we've had on that would. So just let us know if you need names. We'll get it.
I'm open book always. I've been hiatus. I'm getting back into it and starting to crank away at these things. So, it'll be good. I'll hit you up.
Okay, bro.
Yeah, let me know if you want to look at look at our shows. If there's anyone in particular, just let me know. Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks again, man. I'll do a quick outro with Chris. So we'll we'll stay on here. But yeah, you're good. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Sean.
Appreciate it.
Take care, buddy.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. I love that interview with Rain because of the fact, and maybe one day we'll learn why he goes by Rain, but in terms of the fact is, as I said earlier, I haven't talked to a lot of guys with his background. So he was, as you said, very candid and had some great stories. And I think that's why people tune in. So
he's great guy. Pilots I love to have pilots on too. We don't get a lot of them. I don't think there's a lot of them on. He'll probably have more than anybody because of the line of work he was in the brotherhood on that side of the house. But just a great guy, man. And the E3 aviation thing, I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do on that side. That's going to be really cool.
Yeah, on my list of guys to have on, Dan Hampton has been on there, and we'll get him on at some point. But just on this show alone, right? I think we mentioned like 7 guys we have to have on, and we only do one show a week. So people need to realize it's so hard to get everyone on that we want to get on, but we'll get to everyone eventually. And then there's part 2 guys we want to get. I want to get a part 2 with Max Mullen. We're going to have a part 2 with Brad Thor next month. We're going to have a part 2 with Sean Lake next month. So there's plenty of just great guests. But before we go, I know you wanted to mention the Fort Scott giveaway because they're really our number one sponsor. They keep us going more than anyone else. And let's just at least mention that for the listeners.
You experience with the Kraft family, they're just great people.
Yeah,
I mean, you saw them up there. I think that's anything. But we're doing a little. I say we, but we're part of it. Battleline is part of it as we donated stuff for the giveaway. It's just a giveaway of a bunch of equipment. You buy something, you're in for a drawing. Go to Fort Scott Munitions. Go to their website. Find the entry there, and then the rules are there. The $10,000 copper ticket giveaway, and it's just a bunch of gear. Ammo, of course. Battleline donated. Vortex is a sponsor of Battleline Tactical. Love Vortex's optics. Well, we donated a Vortex optic for that, plus signed books and signed hats and things like that. So, go to $10,000 copper ticket giveaway. Just search that, or you can go on my website. There's an email that is coming out from me that you can actually click on that. It'll take you to the rules and what you need to purchase. Guys, we understand things are tough right now. Completely understand that. So don't spend money you don't have. But if you have a little bit and you want to enter for a cool giveaway of a lot of cool gear, that would be one I would recommend you go to. And of course, free ammunition if you're one of the winners. And ammo is not cheap anymore. Nothing's cheap anymore. What am I saying? No. But ammo especially. So just check it out and I enter and buy something. Enter and I hope you win. Somebody will win, and maybe we'll have the winner on the show. Who knows? Maybe we'll get to chat with the winner and have a chat with him.
So check it out, guys, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts.
Please.
We could really use your reviews. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us comments. We read all that stuff. Subscribe to us. If you're listening, go on the YouTube and subscribe to the YouTube. And that's all I've got. We've got another great show in the works for next week. So every Monday, keep listening. We couldn't do it without you guys.
Yeah, God bless you, and keep passing this around, guys. Post this on all your social media and wherever else. We need new listeners. We love having new listeners, so keep pushing our name around there, and we'll keep doing what we're doing. And we do appreciate you. God bless you. Have a great rest of your week, guys.
That's all for this episode of the Battleline Podcast, but we'll be back on Monday with more American Straight Talk. Until then, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Battleline Podcast and on Twitter at Battleline Pod. To sign up for future Battleline tactical courses, go to www.christantoperanto.net. Believe in yourself, face all challenges head on, and as always, never quit.